Today's video we're going to be upgrading my old 66 MHz 486 and putting in an Intel Overdrive at 100 MHz.
We review old technology from games to old PCs, and don't forget the toys. Oh yeah, ancient electronics, we cover it all.
Alright, so here it is. This is my old main 486 machine. So we're going to be doing a lot of upgrades on this guy. We're going to be, at least in this video, we're going to upgrade the CPU. Also the hard drive. So the hard drive I had in this guy was basically, well, I don't even know where I got it. It was certainly used at the time that I put it in here, probably like 15 or so years ago, give or take, and lately it was making a couple weird noises, and I think it was kind of failing. And I had it in one of those like swap hard drive bays that was here, and I don't know if it was the bay itself that was sort of failing somewhere in the connection, or it just wasn't connecting good enough, or if it was the hard drive itself. But I decided to remove both. I'm going to put in a different hard drive. As you can see, I've already kind of started that process. There's a couple directions I was thinking about going now. Right now I have a VLB, I think it's Bus Logic, SCSI controller in there. And that's controlling this SCSI zip drive, and it could control a SCSI hard drive as well. But I think I'm going to remove that because there's something else I wanted to try. And I think I'm going to put in an IDE hard drive. So we're going to look at that. So I think right now, first things first, we got to set up and put it in a new hard drive. Alright, so I am going to go with the mechanical hard drive for this one. I'm using this guy here. It's an IDE Fujitsu. I believe it's a... So this looks like a 3.2 gigabyte. So this is an older drive. It's from 1999. So it's still pretty old, but you know, we're just gonna, this isn't gonna be like a main machine that I'm using all the time, so we're just gonna go with this drive because it's what I had. It's a bit of a bummer. I'm taking out the SCSI card because that means I'm gonna have to take out the SCSI zip drive too, but that's all right. This motherboard is interesting as a 486 motherboard because it actually has one built-in IDE connector. So the motherboard itself can support two IDE drives, which is a little bit uncommon for a socket 3 or a 486 class motherboard. Usually you didn't really see that like built-in I/O like IDE until the Pentium era. So that's pretty neat for a socket 3 board, so we're going to utilize it. Unfortunately, it only supports, due to the BIOS, it only supports the like 500-ish megabyte limit for a hard drive. So even though this is 3.2 gigs, it will only detect about 500 megabytes. But we're going to do something. I'm going to try. There's a card I have that I've been wanting to try, and I thought it would be interesting to try it in this machine. And it is this thing here. I have it still sealed. This is an eIDE LS120 upgrade card. So basically what this is, I think there's a picture of it. It's going to look something like this. There's no, it doesn't look like there's any kind of connector on it or anything. It's just an 8-bit ISA, and basically it just has a BIOS on it that kind of injects itself when you're posting and starting up the machine. And this new BIOS should kind of upgrade our motherboard to support eIDE and LS120 floppy drives. Unfortunately, it would be cool to put an LS120 drive here, but I actually don't have one, so I can't do that. But with the new eIDE support, it should be able to support this full 3.2 gigabytes now, even in DOS. This is an interesting card. 8 or 16 ISA bus on an AT or Pentium computer. So I think theoretically, I mean, 8-bit theoretically, you could put this in an old IBM, 5170 or something like that, theoretically, and have it work and add eIDE. I guess you would need another I/O card though. That's an IDE controller, since there's no IDE built into that board. What else does it say here? Supports LS120, backwards compatibility, blah blah, 5 times faster than the standard. Oh, that's the LS120. Upgrade your, this is what I'm interested in. Upgrade your existing IDE controller to support eIDE devices such as hard disks, CD-ROMs, and tape drives. Supports fast ATA, LBA modes, breaks the 528 megabyte limit. It says it supports drives up to 8.4 gigabytes, so hopefully that solves the problem with using this guy and we can use the full hard drive there. So I've never used one of these cards before, these super enhancer cards, so I'm very interested. You can see the plastic, I think it's original, but it's slowly crushing this box, so I don't feel too bad about, you know, unsealing it. I think I paid a couple bucks for this at like a swap meet, so this will be interesting to use. I guess if this doesn't work, I'll just go with what the 528 megabytes on here, or maybe if this doesn't work, I will go with SCSI. I don't know. I have to go dig up a SCSI drive for that, but yeah. Okay, so let's install this and see if it works. All right, let's do a bit of an unboxing here. Original price tag, SIG Super E, $24.99. Does it say where this was from? It doesn't say. I don't see like a store branding on here. So I'm going to cut this open. It's a little awkward because I'm behind the camera, so I guess this isn't a true unboxing. So I'm going to open this and then we'll look at the insides. Alright, got all that plastic off of it. It says right here, I guess I missed this, is from Fry's Electronics. Looks like 1999 is the date code on here. Store 17, wherever that is. Alright, so it looks like the side's open here, so let's pull it out. Okay, there's the card. It looks just like it does on the back. Some jumpers. Very small card. What else is in here? We got a user manual. And that's interesting. It wasn't in, well, it might have just slid out of this while it was in the box. We've got, here is, well, this says, okay, there's drivers, I'm guessing, one for Windows 95 and one for DOS and Windows 3.1. Drivers of some sort, and then this extra paper. What's this? Installation and common problems, things like that. Hopefully we don't have any problems, common or not, with installing this guy. Alright, so here we are. Took the lid off. Here's that SCSI controller card. It's a VLB. I'm going to have to remove that, and I guess the zip drive too. And we have a VLB video card and a sound card. We'll take a quick look at those. So right now I'm just going to remove this, maybe that zip drive as well. Alright, here's a better look at the board. This is an absolute mess as far as cables go. Here's that zip drive. It's just a straight 50-pin SCSI zip drive. Pretty speedy for being a zip drive. Here's the SCSI controller I had in there. This is a Bus Logic. I've actually gone over this card in my original video on this machine from years ago, but take another look at it. This has been a pretty good SCSI card. I'd like to use it again. I'd like to put it in a different machine, but nothing for it right now. Unless this thing doesn't work right, and then I might end up putting it back in here. The sound card, right now it's just a generic Sound Blaster 16, I think, with a Vibra chip maybe. It doesn't matter. This is going to get replaced in a later video, along with the graphics card, or video card, which is this guy right here. This is a 1 megabyte VLB card. This uses a WDC chip. Let's see here. This uses the WD90C33ZZ. This is supposed to be a pretty fast, actually a pretty fast chip. It does, I mean, right now, actually, I've run this and benchmarked it, and it's definitely noticeably slower than, like, say, like my Sang Labs ET4000. Yeah, I mean it's noticeably slower in benchmarks and just looking, but apparently there's a secret setting, I believe, with these jumpers that sets it to zero wait state, and when it's in zero wait state, it's supposedly very fast. Like I said, there's supposed to be like a secret way to configure, I believe, these jumpers right here so that runs in zero wait states. Supposedly that really ups the speed of that card, but for some reason, even though a bunch of sites mention that it has this this sort of like undocumented like way you can set the jumpers, including sites like Vogan's, no one decided it was a good idea to actually state what that jumper configuration is. And when you ask, it's like nobody knows. It's like some strange Illuminati secret or something. So I don't know what the combination is. I played around with a couple of them, and it didn't do anything. Like a couple different there's like so many combinations with these two jumpers, but I couldn't get different. Couldn't get any like benchmark speed differences no matter how I set these. So who knows? These are supposed to be. It might be different on my cards. These are not the faster chips. So I've seen versions of this card that have 45 speed. What is that, like nanoseconds or something? 45. This is 60, so these are kind of more standard. So maybe this card, this looks exactly like the other ones, except the memory on this is apparently slower. I just noticed that. So maybe this one can't be set to zero wait state. So, but again, later video, this is getting replaced anyway, so it doesn't matter. This is just a placeholder to give us a video. So looking at the board here, UMC chipset. This is a DX2 nice little fan on it. This is going to get replaced later in this video, hopefully. 2 VLB slots and a lot of 16-bit ISA. There, right here, well, that's built-in floppy. Nothing special about that, but right here is the built-in IDE supporting 2 devices. A little bit unique for socket 3. Right now I'm using an external battery that connects right there. I think this used a barrel battery, but I don't see where it went. So maybe this never, maybe that's the only battery that it ever had. I know it doesn't have a coin cell. I don't see where a battery would have went. Anyways, something else I noticed here is the cache, the L2 cache. Now, remember, I put this machine together well over a decade ago. I don't remember if it just came with the L2 cache or I added the L2 cache, but it seems there's different chips, and I think these ratings are pretty, like 20, I'm pretty sure I have 256K of 15 nanosecond L2 cache. So I think also what I'm going to do, and maybe that explains why this thing was performing so slow in my other benchmarks, and benching against my right back 46, maybe this cache is just really slow. So I think another thing I'm going to do with this upgrade is I'm going to pull this cache and I'm going to add faster. Same amount, 256K, but I think I have faster and matching cache that I'll throw in there. But I think right now first I'm going to put it together and I'm going to get the hard drive working, and then we'll do some benches. Then I'll change the cache, and then we'll see if there's a difference. And maybe we can play around with speed timings or something. Okay, so the good news is that it seems that the Super Enhancer card does seem to be working. It did boot up to the hard drive, but as you can see, it's still it's only detecting, well, less than the 528 megabytes. So I think what we have to do is reformat the hard drive now with that EIDE card in there. And then hopefully if we reformat and then reinstall DOS, hopefully we'll see the whole 3+ gigs, but we'll see. Alright, so it looks like the card worked and everything is working now. I just had to format everything, and here we go. There's the EIDE, and it does detect our drive here, and then it will boot up. But yeah, there is a 2 gigabyte. I kind of forgot there's a 2 gigabyte kind of hard limit with DOS. So I took the hard drive and I partitioned it. So the first partition, the C drive, is 2 gigabytes, and then I have a D drive That's the other 1 gigabyte. And here we are in the C drive. Right now, just very basic. All I have on here is DOS. And if we look here, we do have right there slightly over 2 gigabytes. So that's good. So it looks like the card's working and the hard drive setup. So now I just got to install the other, like the mouse driver and the CD-ROM and all that stuff. And then I'm going to put the benchmark suite on here, and we're going to run the benchmarks. I'm going to get some numbers, and then I'm going to swap out the cache with faster cache, and then hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference. But we'll see. And then once we get that all done and everything sorted out, then I think we're going to move on to CPU upgrade. So that's the big thing I wanted to do in this part 1 of this series here. And then once we do that, I think we're going to install Windows 3.1, and then I might wrap it up from there. And then we're going to do a part 2 where we're going to look at a video card, and then we're going to have a part 3. We're going to look at a sound card, and we're going to have a pretty unique and interesting system hopefully by the end of this series. Alright, so here is the new L2 cache, 256K of L2 cache, and this is 15, I believe, nanoseconds as opposed to the 20 that are in the 46 board now. Now, I don't think just putting these in will do any kind of speed increase. I don't think, but it should let me use faster timings maybe, although these didn't really work that well in the write-back 46 with letting me use faster timings. So I don't know. They're a little bit faster. I'll just put them in anyways. They also all match. They're like the same brand. The other one I think is made of like 2 different brands. It's worked for me, but let's just make it all consistent with these guys. Alright, so spoiler alert, changing the cache to the slightly faster L2 cache didn't do anything. My benchmarks were exactly the same. I can't say I'm too surprised. And yeah, I did go into the BIOS and I did try to like tighten up the memory settings, and it was exactly like the 20 nanosecond cache I had prior. I couldn't squeeze any better timings out of this new slightly faster cache, but that's okay. Speaking of the BIOS, so right here is about the best timings I could squeeze out of this memory without getting instability and lockups. One thing to note about this BIOS, if you see auto configuration up there, you can make any of the changes here with, like, you know, the read WS options and the cache read hit burst and whatever. But if you don't set auto configuration to disabled, it looks like you set it, but it won't register. Alright, so let's look at a couple benchmarks here. So the green is this system as it is. That was, you know, with the best memory timings I could squeeze out of it, and with that WD90C33ZZ VLB video card in it, and not too shabby performance, I don't think. And then the one next to it, you see the purple. That is just to compare video card. I figured for fun I threw in the ET4000, and there is definitely a difference between these video cards here. The ET4000 definitely gives a boost to performance in some of these. It's a noticeable boost. Not so much in Quake, but even in Doom it gives a little bit of a boost. Not so much in PC Player, but 3D Bench it does. So there's probably a lot of games where, yeah, it is a noticeable boost in speed there. And then just for another comparison, next to that in the orange, that is, if you watch my videos, you know the last video I did was actually replacing this 4086 with another one that has like a write-back enhanced 66 megahertz DX2, and I just wanted to compare this old machine now with the tweaked memory timings and the new video card, and my write-back enhanced machine, and you can see the write-back enhanced machine still beats this guy, even when they have the same video card. It's not too dramatic, but yeah, the write-back enhanced 46 I put together is still beating this guy. Even when they have the same video card. And again, even I think the memory timings on this machine are tweaked a little bit better, maybe. But then again, that other 486 has the advantage of running in write-back mode. So Anyways, alright, let's move on. So we look here at this socket. It's a nice blue socket. Usually that means it's like a Pentium Overdrive ready. When you look here, very few jumper combinations on this. A lot of motherboards you'll have, like, especially later motherboards like this one, you'll have a huge array of jumpers for setting the CPU, but on this one it is not so much. Sorry if it's hard to see there. Basically you have jumper settings for 46DX and DX2, which it is set to right now, 46SX, and then there's that last setting there. Let me see if it's hard to read it, sorry. It's for 46P24T, which I believe is the Pentium Overdrive. So it doesn't seem like there's any specific settings for a Intel Overdrive or a 46 Overdrive, just the Pentium Overdrive. So I believe in this case what we do is we just, I think I just leave it as it is, set for a 46DX or DX2, and then hopefully the Intel Overdrive chip will just work and it will apply the ×3 multiplier, and we'll still get the correct speed, and hopefully everything will check out okay. Now I want to do kind of the big upgrade for this computer, and that is I'm going to be installing this guy here. This is an Intel Overdrive. So basically what this Intel Overdrive is, this is an Intel DX4 486. So this is running at 100 megahertz. So same bus as the DX2, it's just with a higher multiplier. And this chip has a fancy little heat sink sort of stuck on it, and a fancy little voltage regulator there, so it will work in boards like mine that do not support 3.3 volts, since as far as I know, all of the DX4 CPUs all use 3.3 volts, and older motherboards, or ones that just didn't decide to have the lower voltage like mine, only support CPUs running at 5 volts, so you need some kind of interposer or a chip like this that has a voltage regulator built in. So I can install this in my 5 volt only motherboard, and those little components should change it to 3.3 volt, so this CPU will work. There are faster chips like this Kingston Turbo chip here. This actually uses an AMD 5X86 running at 103 megahertz, and if you can see, this actually has a little fan on it, and it has voltage regulation stuff as well on it, so it can also run on motherboards that only support 5 volt CPUs. Unfortunately, I can't use this chip here because it is dead, but otherwise this is also a good option. It should be a little bit faster than the Intel 100 megahertz chips. Now, because I did watch LGR's video on his Woodgrain 46, that he did upgrade to the same CPU as mine. He upgraded from I think his was an AMD 66 megahertz DX2, and he also upgraded at one point to an Intel Overdrive 100 megahertz. Now, watching that video, there is software, which you can see right here. I'm installing the software for the Overdrive. It's not necessary to install it, but I decided to install it. He neglected to run the software prior to switching CPUs, because you can compare your old CPU to your new one. So I wanted to run this program before I install the Intel Overdrive and then see what it does with the comparison. As you'll notice, the top here is cut off a little bit because in my excitement of preparing to upgrade the CPU, I forgot to hit like the auto config button on my capture, part of my capture setup, and it wasn't centered correctly. But this is a cool, you don't need to run this, but it's a cool little thing that came with the Intel Overdrive. I like the little stupid graphics and stuff with it, but it just tells you, basically it tells you about your new CPU, and like the instructions here, there we go, right there, there's before upgrade, and it saves this. So it sees my CPU at 66 megahertz, and it has an index of 297. Although, after going through this process, I sort of doubt if that number changes. Because, you know, I mean, a DX2, there's not much difference at all, basically, between the Intel and the AMD version and stuff. But depending on the system, you can have a 66 megahertz 46 system that's slower and then one that's faster. But I have a suspicion that this little program here only detects, like, if you have a 66 megahertz DX2, and it just gives you that number. It's the same number. That's what I suspect. Although it would be kind of hilarious that if it detected the AMD version, it gave a slower number. That would be kind of funny. Even though I've personally tested, they're identical speed-wise. But that would be funny. I wouldn't put that above Intel to do something like that, where it detects the AMD version and it gives you a lower number. But anyways, this was actually a pretty good, after going through this little setup program, it's actually really good at showing how to install your upgrade here. So, you know, it's informative. It goes step by step. So this would have been, like, if this was the mid-90s and I had no idea how to do this upgrade, and I was very nervous because I had a very expensive computer and I just got a very expensive upgrade chip. This little program is, like, really good. It was showing you how to do the upgrade if you knew nothing about the upgrade. So, you know, of course, now in our day, like, looking back is just easy. You just pop out the old one, put in the new one. But back then, this would have been very helpful as far as the upgrade process. But yeah, I like it. It's really cool. It's just a little bit, like, you know, corny, you know, graphics here to show you how to do it. But again, I think it's well done. So anyways, enough of me blabbering about this stupid install program. Let's actually do the upgrade.
Alright, so with my motherboard, I don't think there's any jumpers or anything I need to do. I think I just install this guy and cross our fingers and hope it works. Alright, so here's my DX2 66. This is a really nice heatsink on this. It has the fan on it. It's really nice. So I just remove this. So this should just come out here. Da-da-da-da-da. And that's it. And then if you see, it says Intel Overdrive ready. I think that might just refer to the Pentium Overdrive, but I don't know. Maybe it should work with this guy. I don't, like I said, I don't think the jumper settings were just for the Pentium Overdrive. So I don't know. We'll put this guy in and hope it works here.
I just noticed this during editing, but in the upper left-hand corner of the socket there, those numbers and letters upside down, it looks like they say obey.
Alright, we're installed in the socket. And the cool thing about this setup too is I have this big case fan here and it's blowing air across. So even though this CPU doesn't have a fan on it, it's still getting cooling from the case fan that's blowing across the heatsink here. So that's nice. Alright, I guess all we have to do now is power it up and see what we get.
So booting up here, it does seem to work. I didn't really have to do anything, just powered it up and it worked. But I did notice a few peculiar things. First of all, before, when it was right before it would load up DOS, it would say 256K. Here, stupid me, I forgot a disk I had in Drive. But anyways, it would say 256K L2 cache. It doesn't say that anymore. It also stated the CPU. It would say 66 megahertz DX2. Again, it doesn't state the CPU speed or anything like that. It's probably a BIOS thing. At the top, it's the main processor. It just says, it doesn't know. It just says 46DX or 487SX. Again, we knew that this motherboard didn't per se directly support the Intel Overdrive. But doing some testing, I did find some strange things. We'll look at benchmarks in a second here, and then I'll discuss what may be going on here. Well, the first thing I want to do is run check CPU just to see if that pans out, and it does. It's detecting the 46DX4 running at 100 megahertz, multiplier times 3 with a bus class of 33 megahertz. And internal L1 cache, it says write through. I think some of these might have write back on them. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a setting. It depends on the motherboard. But either way, it says the L1 cache is running in write back mode. And then here too, we confirmed it again. It said, it was briefly on there, but it did say 100 megahertz DX4. So it does seem that our CPU is running at the correct speed. Let's run that Intel Overdrive test again now that we've done the upgrade and see if it does indeed compare the numbers. And yes, it remembered. So yeah, according to this generic Intel measurement thing here, it does detect a significant upgrade. Double the internal cache and speed tripling circuitry compared to that old-fashioned speed doubling circuitry there. So 297, and now it is 435. So quite significant here. And then we get this cool little iComp index thing that, again, I suspect all these numbers are fixed. Like, it's only looking at the CPU. It's not looking at video cards or L2 cache or anything like that. And yeah, there we go. So only the Pentiums, according to this thing, are faster. All right, and then, you know, there's different little cool little things you can do, like a processor instruction test and a floating point test of some sort, and it just does its thing. Again, I don't really know exactly what it's doing here, but it passed all of them, and it passes the floating point tests as well, which is all good. So yeah, it looks like our CPU upgrade was more or less successful. Everything seems to check out, and it does seem to be running at the correct speed. So now we're going to look at some benchmarks, and we're going to see what they say, and then we're gonna talk about something that I suspect might be going on here, and maybe you guys can do in the comments and tell me if you agree or not. And here we go back to our wonderful bar chart here, and this is the same chart as before, except now we've added another group, which is the system now with the Intel Overdrive, and that is represented by the blue line. As you can see, it is quite a performance increase across the board here. So in all 4 of our tests, we did get noticeably better performance with the Intel Overdrive. 3D Bench seems to always give the most differences here, but PC Player, we see a decent bump. Doom 2, what is that? It's like a 4, almost a 5. Well, not quite a 5, more like a 4 FPS jump there. And even, you know, Quake, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but, you know, getting 2 points there, 2 FPS more in Quake, then, you know, that's respectable. So everything seems to check out here. It's not quite as high as I thought it would be. I thought it would be a bigger jump in performance, but it is a bigger jump. So let's take a look at Top Bench, and this is where I start to get a little suspicious. Alright, so here's our Top Bench result. I've just taken a snapshot here, and it's just, to me, it's looking all kind of weird. But the other thing is the score, 226. And the thing is, my 66 megahertz, the right back enhanced 66 megahertz 486 I built in my last video, that thing scored a 235, I think. And there's no way, even with the cache and the right back performance, there's no way that machine is faster than this one. I mean, I guess it could be, but I don't know. It's like a 9 point difference here, but the fact that this is scoring less than the 66 megahertz machine, it just strikes me as a little weird. And I think I don't know how Top Bench calculates everything. So I know this machine, the motherboard's just slower. I know, like, the cache might be as fast or slower, which I'll talk about in a second. And I know the video card's slower than that other right back enhanced machine. So I don't know, maybe it takes all that into consideration and that's why it's getting a lower score. But I don't know, it just sort of conflicts with the benchmarks we just looked at, where that machine just did better across the board and everything. So I don't know why it's getting like a lower score with Top Bench. I don't know. If someone can explain that to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm just using like an old version of Top Bench. But I do, after looking at all these things, I do suspect that maybe when I installed, because, I don't know, maybe because of the BIOS, this machine could use a BIOS update. It's probably an older BIOS. Not as easy on these older boards. You can't just flash them with a floppy disk. But anyways, I have a sneaky suspicion that maybe when I install the Intel Overdrive, it is disabling my L2 cache. for whatever reason. And I tried running cache check, and even though it detected cache prior when I had the old DX2 in, it's not detecting L2 cache anymore. And if I deactivate the L2 cache in the BIOS, it's not changing my benchmarks numbers. So I don't know. That's my sneaky suspicion that for whatever reason, when I install this Intel Overdrive, it's disabling the L2 cache, which is unfortunate. I'm still getting a performance increase. It's still increasing the performance over the old DX2, even with the L2 cache, but I don't know. It seems like it might be disabling my cache, which again is unfortunate. Maybe a BIOS upgrade would fix that if there's one available, but whatever. I'm still getting a performance increase, but that's just what I suspect. So I don't know. What do you guys think on that? While we're here running Top Bench, I just want to show you the turbo button does function on this machine. So to illustrate the utility of a turbo button, if I do hit it, you can see the score here. It drops pretty dramatically. So it goes from, like a high-end 46. It takes it down to about the speed, at least according to Top Bench here, of a 386 at 40 megahertz. So yeah, that's pretty useful. For me, because I'm insane and I have like a million computers here, and I can literally just pull out a 386 running at 40 megahertz and game on that if I really wanted to. But if you're not crazy like me and you only have a couple retro computers, only room for a couple retro computers, having a turbo button on a machine like this can be very helpful. Alright, so let's just look at some games and see how they perform on this machine. Nope, I lied. One more quick benchmark. Let's run Speed Sys here. And this is like all the tests it would do. And if you notice, once again, there is nothing. It did not see the L2 cache, only the L1 cache. So again, another thing that maybe supports my theory a little bit. But yeah, here, everything else checks out. It sees everything else fine. It sees the DX4 to 100 megahertz and all that. And there's the hard drive performance. Again, I don't really understand any of those numbers very well, but maybe some of you more nerdy technical guys out there can look at this and geek out over all the numbers and stuff on there. And here's a little public service announcement. Always remember when you install an I/O card to check if there are drivers. It's something I always don't think about with like I/O cards. And when I was installing games to do these testing, it seemed to be they were installing games very slowly. And then I realized that this IDE upgrade card actually came with a floppy disk with drivers. So I installed that, and there were drivers for like CD Blitz or whatever, and I installed those, and it did help with performance. So remember to check things like that if you add like these I/O cards for like hard disks and stuff like that. I also forgot to do that with the Right Back machine in the previous video I did. I had a fancy VLB I/O card, controller card, and I neglected in that video, I neglected to install the drivers for it. And after I did that, at least according to, utilities, it seems like it doubled my hard drive performance. So remember to do that. Alright, first up is Duke Nukem 3D. This should kind of stress the system a bit. And it played okay. As you can see, I have the little FPS counter up there, and it generally stayed around the 20s, so not stellar, but perfectly playable. Even as a kid, I wouldn't even have noticed. This seemed fine. I know people are a little more snobby with frame rates these days, and like I said, that isn't buttery smooth, but I find it to be playable. It even, would go up even to the 30s or 40s at times. One thing I did notice, there was a little bit of a stutter at some points. It would kind of like stop and stutter. I kind of suspect maybe that's when it was accessing the CD drive. I did run this benchmark, well, not benchmark, but I did do this gameplay footage before I installed those CD Blitz drivers. So maybe it was just stuttering when it would access data from the CD. But I don't know. I'm not sure on that one. But I didn't have that stutter in any of the other games that I've tested, that I played, more or less. So yeah, that might be the issue. Maybe not. But overall, it seemed to do okay.
time to play with myself.
Next up is terminal velocity, and for settings, I tried to use, I didn't max everything out. I tried to use the graphics options that were appropriate for like a 486. I believe that they don't have like high, low, or medium. Those kind of on the graphics options, it will have like image quality. There's like 46, and then I think Pentium. Those might be the only two. But anyways, I found that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I did things like I turned shadows on 486 mode. But I didn't go like all out crazy or anything. I didn't set it on like Pentium settings. But anyways, overall, this game does have an FPS counter, which I did have running, as you can see, and it seemed to stay around like the 13 FPS mark, and that sounds really bad, but I can tell you, actually playing the game, it felt fine. It was perfectly playable. I had no problems playing the game. It didn't feel like it was running that low, or that, with those low frame rates. Like as a kid playing the game as it is right here, I wouldn't have noticed anything weird. It would have been like perfectly fine. I would have had a great time with it. Despite what it's saying the frame rates are. The only time I really had any of that like stuttering was going into, there's like these tunnels in the planet you go into. When I would go into them or out of them, it would stutter a little bit. But other than that, it played fine. Next, let's take a look at Wacky Wheels, kind of a poor man's Mario Kart for the PC. And yeah, this game played fine as well. Trying to get a variety here. I got like a first-person shooter and a flight game, and now I want to try a racing game here. And I'm going to be the shark because, I don't know, something cool about driving around a go-kart as a shark. Alright, let's take a look at Rise of the Triad, another first-person shooter game. And this game ran fine. I expected it to. I believe this is built on a like a modified version of the Wolfenstein 3D engine, where it allows like verticality, I believe. A very weird game. It's just very strange first-person shooter. But yeah, it played and ran just fine.
outsider!
And just to wrap things up, I wanted to run Commander Keen 4, just because I wanted to test if this WD video card or video chip would have an issue with the scrolling in this game, and it does not. No problem at all. It scrolls just fine without the jitteriness some cards display. Didn't even have to go into options and set things or anything. It just worked.
So before we finish things up for this video with this machine, I want to do one more thing, and I wanted to install Windows 3.11. The machine has more than enough horsepower now to run Windows fine, and having Windows on this machine is going to become more important in part 2 of these upgrade videos I'm doing with this machine. So let's install Windows 3.1. Alright, so we're in the setup here. Everything looks good so far. So I guess we will begin the installation. I think it's like 7 disks, so let us begin and hopefully don't run into a lot of issues.
And yes, we did get a successful install of Windows 3.11. So the main thing I just want to do with Windows here is I want to check out the video drivers for this VLB card, the WD VLB card. And as you can see here, here's the different little options in the drivers. You can change refresh rates, you know, some of the usual stuff. Some of this stuff, like I have no idea what it does. Like this line, select line drawing, I have no idea what that is. Brichian line, strip line drawing, no idea. Just kept it at default. Here's the high color, 32,000 or 64. Some of these just give a weird error looking message. Let me see the video driver right now. I have it at 800 by 600 at 64,000 colors. So if you look here, this is kind of weird, the driver setup. These are the different resolutions you can pick. Where it says VGA, that's the default one. Anyways, when I installed these drivers, it gave me a huge list of resolutions, and I had to like individually pick which resolutions I wanted. So I picked the one I'd probably use the most, which is 800 by 600 with like the highest number of colors available. And then on the highest resolution option that it gave me, which is this guy here, which is what, 1024 by 768. I forget, I think it was 256 colors. And that is the highest resolution that it allows me to run. And it works fine. For Windows 3.1, I mean, look, this gives me a lot of space, but it is, I don't know, it feels a little too tiny to me, so that's why I kind of, for like Windows 3.1, I just kind of prefer 800 by 600 with all the more colors, although I don't know if a lot of programs actually take advantage of all those colors. But yeah, I guess even with the 1 megabyte of RAM, this card is capable of 1024 by 768. Again, only 256 colors, but I think that's fine for Windows 3.1. And yeah, so this card seems to work just fine under Windows. And then let's do, I was trying to look for a Windows 3.1 test because, you know, cards perform different under DOS and then under Windows if they're accelerating Windows. So I think the best thing I was able to find here was this right here, which I think WinBench version 3.1, and it just runs all the tests and it gives you some ridiculous number at the end. But what I'm going to do, I can run this in Windows, and then it gives me the ability to compare Windows performance between this card and then what we upgrade it to in the next video. I fast forward a little bit here, but yeah, this thing does a whole bunch of interesting tests, like this seizure test here, and then, you know, like scrolls text and things like that to give us a score. So let's see what the score it gives us at the end here. And there is our graphics win mark, 983. That wait, 1, 2, 3. Is that 9,835,822 is our graphics win mark. Although for some reason it says it's a Compaq 386 with a QVision graphics. It's comparing this machine. Okay, so there's a base of comparison. 1, 2, 3. Wait, no, okay, yeah, that is a smaller number. So, okay, I thought it was thinking it was on a Compaq. Okay, so it's comparing it to whatever that Compaq was, and we did score significantly higher. But yeah, there's all kind of different options for benches, like things to run in this benchmark. I've never used WinBench before, so I just kind of ran the default benchmark. I'm not real familiar with it, but if any of you have suggestions for the future on things I should run in WinBench 3.1, any of those things up there, let me know. So I think that's good for right now with this machine. So far, I'm pretty pleased with the results. Not bad. So we've got the CPU upgraded, and we've got everything up and running and all that jazz. So yeah, I think this was a successful build so far. Some decent upgrades so far. Lots of storage space now. Like some nice little CPU upgrade there. As it is right now, completely usable system. There's nothing wrong with it. Excellent 486. But I'm not done with this guy, so we're gonna do some more. So stay tuned for part 2. So part 2, we're gonna swap out that video card. Although I have to say, I do kind of like that Western Digital card in there. I couldn't get it as fast as some people could. I guess my version of the card just had slower memory on it. But overall, I think it's still a great card. It didn't have issues with keying. And it seems to run really good in DOS and Windows. I haven't seen any issues with it so far. So it's a good VLB card, but we're going to put something a little more interesting in there. So stay tuned for part 2. Part 2, we're going to focus on upgrading the video in this machine. So thanks for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video.